This is my post commentary for my most recent Cave Story PB. 1 hour and 5 seconds. So close to sub 1. I haven't had good enough internet lately to stream, so I've been doing some runs offline and doing some local recordings because, I was 5 seconds away from sub 101, so I really wanted to get a PB soon. But I was listening to a YouTube video in the background while I was playing, so I didn't want that in my PB VOD, so I muted the sound, and now I'm doing post commentary. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Since I am doing post commentary, I figure I'll do something a little bit different, a little special, and not only do more in-depth commentary than I usually do, but I'll make this sort of a pitch for putting this game into AGDQ 2014, or 2015. This game was already in AGDQ 2014, so mission accomplished there, I guess. I don't know if the people handling submissions are even going to watch this. I doubt they are. I doubt they'll have the time to watch everyone's submissions, but whatever. This will be fun for me. Cave Story is a 2D platformer shooter, obviously. I would describe it as pretty momentum-based, certainly not the most momentum-based platformer out there, but more so than average, I would argue. If you've played other games made by Pixel, especially Ika-chan, then you probably noticed that he seems to like making games with an emphasis on building momentum. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. As you can see so far, there are unskippable cutscenes in this game, but they're all quite short and spread out, though there are quite a few here at the beginning of the game. It won't take too long for things to pick up, though. Speaking of momentum, I just saved my momentum as I entered the water there by just jumping as soon as I hit the ground. It's a very minor time save there, and it's not like it's hard or anything, but that's something that'll become much more important as the game goes on. And by the way, I'm jumping everywhere I go throughout the run. I'm just constantly jumping, not because it's fun to jump in video games, but because you move a little bit faster, just a little bit, when you're airborne. It's about 5% faster, which is not a lot. 5% is not a lot faster, but, I mean, throughout about an hour-long run, it can make a pretty big difference. And it's not like it's particularly challenging in most cases to keep jumping, so I might as well do it. Nothing to say here, more cutscene. I would recommend donations at this point, if I were in the marathon. There is not a lot of randomness in Cave Story, or to be a little bit more specific, there is a lot of randomness in Cave Story. There are many instances of randomness in Cave Story, but the instances individually are not really a big deal. This graveyard area, for example, I didn't lose any time here, but I can sometimes lose time just based on the positioning of the mushroom enemies in that area. But the thing about that is, it's something that you're not going to notice unless you're really familiar with Cave Story speedrunning. If you are playing this game at a marathon or something like that, and I lose time based on randomness, or, things like that, the audience is not going to notice, except for the few who are already familiar with speedrunning the game. This area is a great example of the randomness in Cave Story. I'm about to save 10 seconds on this split, and a good chunk of that is just due to getting good drops. But, I mean, that if you're competing for a good time, those 10 seconds are pretty important. But in terms of like a marathon setting, that's like nothing really. As long as I don't do anything that looks stupid and You know, as long as it's something that's pretty much outside of my control and it doesn't take more than about 10 seconds, you know, nobody's gonna notice. And that is pretty much how I would describe all of the randomness in Cave Story. The main goal of Egg Corridor here is to make sure my Polar Star gets up to level 3 by the time I'm at the end of it. I'll explain a little bit more about weapons and leveling and stuff here in a little bit. Right there, I barely avoid getting hit by the basil, the little white thing at the bottom of the screen. It one-shots you if it touches you. It looks risky, but it's really not. I mean, if you're doing Egg Corridor optimally, you are always going to almost get hit by the basil. It's not actually hard to avoid or anything if you know how to do it, but it looks like it's hard to avoid, and it looks risky and butt clinchy, and I think that's the kind of thing that's good for a marathon game. Speaking of things that look cool, you can just stand inside of this boss and mash, because he has no hitbox. And the thing about mashing in this game is it's very apparent just how fast the player is mashing, due to the distinctiveness of both the projectile sprites and their sound effects when you shoot your weapon. If somebody's mashing well, you can really tell, and I think I'm pretty good at mashing. Not the best, obviously. I can think of several speedrunners off the top of my head who do not even play games that really require mashing, who are better at mashing than me, just like from skipping dialogue and stuff like that. But I think I'm pretty good. Getting better all the time. I'll be better by HDQ 2015. Anyway, I think that's good for a marathon game just because good mashing looks impressive. And if it's something that's very apparent to notice in the game itself, then that's great. Neat little damage boost here to get this life capsule. I got a life capsule earlier, and this is my second one. It takes time to get each of these life capsules, but it's not just for safety, it's really necessity. There are many times throughout this run where you need to take damage just to go fast, and getting the life capsules that I get is faster than not getting them for that reason. There is actually only one that I can think of that is not out of the way that I skip, but I do skip one that doesn't take much time to grab. So as far as health collection, it is optimized a bit, but I mean ultimately being able to take damage is just too valuable. So I guess I'll go ahead and mention how leveling weapons works in this game. This game does have experience that you can use to level up, but it's not like in RPGs, most RPGs, where, you know, you're leveling up your character. When you get experience, the experience goes to whatever weapon you have out when you collect it. And the experience, by the way, is the little orange shards that enemies often drop when you kill them. When you grab those, they go to whatever weapon you have out at the time, and each weapon has up to 3 levels. Theoretically, each level is better than the last. It's not always the case, but generally the idea is the weapons are supposed to get better as they level up. If you take damage, then whatever weapon you have out when you take that damage will lose experience and it can de-level. There's a fine balance between taking damage to save time, but also not taking too much damage so that number 1, you don't die, and number 2, your weapons don't de-level, and that adds a huge amount of depth, I think, to this game, both speedrunning and otherwise. I should also explain how projectiles work in this game. I don't think Cave Story is totally unique in this regard, but there are very few other games that do it this way, to my knowledge. Basically, there is no limit on how fast you can shoot most weapons, but there is a limit on how many projectiles can be on screen at one time. So if you're really far away from an enemy or a wall or anything that might dissipate your projectile, you can't shoot it as fast. So I'm about to get a weapon called the Fireball. It deals more damage than my Polar Star, but it's balanced so that it has slow-moving projectiles, and they move, they bounce around in like a really inconvenient pattern. So technically you can't really shoot it as fast, and it's not as good from range. But the thing is, I mean, if you're right up next to an enemy and you're just camping its hitbox, you can just mash away and shoot it just as fast as the Polar Star. And, the patterns of the projectiles don't matter. So I'm going to be using the Fireball to deal damage whenever I can. It's going to be my boss killer, basically. Here's Choco. She's cute. You can get her a lipstick as an Easter egg, and that was a donation incentive last marathon. Hopefully that'll go better this time. But yeah, I'll be using my Fireball as a heavy damage dealer whenever I can, which means I'm going to be hugging enemies a lot, which is kind of risky, but I mean, I'm consistent at all the boss strats and stuff, so. That's a cool new jelly kill technique by Hidden Distance. It's actually both faster and easier than the old technique. And it's cool because it demonstrates very well just how powerful the Fireball is when you use it right next to an enemy. I'm getting to the point now where the game has you do what I would call a fetch quest, which is really long and boring and not skillful or anything like that, but there's a neat way around that. I need to get another item from this big jelly, and I can just ride this enemy right back up to it. I would say this trick that I'm about to do is possibly the hardest trick in the game, at least to a new player. I've got it consistent now, but I mean, it took so much practice for me to be able to do it remotely consistently. Easy peasy. And that's the Checo House skip, and that saves a whole lot of time and a whole lot of boredom, really. What I did there, in case it isn't apparent, is I reset my iframes by opening my inventory. That's just something that the game does. If you open your inventory while you have invincibility frames, it resets them. So I was able to use that to do a double damage boost. Theoretically, you could just damage boost off of an enemy indefinitely. Of course, you'd be limited by your health, but here's a boss fight coming up. It's very easy and not risky at all, but to people who are not familiar with speedrunning this game, it looks really cool. You can just jump right on top of Balrog, and he's totally cool with it. I wanted to be on the right side of Malko's sprite there, because whenever you start talking to him, you jump backwards opposite of, the direction he is in, compared to you. So I wanted to jump back toward the door, since that's where I needed to go next. Right here, I'm going to be getting the missile launcher. Technically, I was supposed to get it earlier in Egg Corridor, but if you pick up one of the ammo upgrades for the missile launcher later on, it just gives you the missile launcher if you don't already have it. So it's a lot faster to get it there than it is to get it in Egg Corridor. I'm waiting for these bats behind me to catch up to me, so I wasn't losing any time there by grabbing the XP from those enemies. It's very important to get my missiles up to level 2, and you can see what I needed those bats for. That damage boost saves quite a bit of time, but it's really easy. In a marathon setting, I probably won't point out how easy certain things are. like that damage boost, I probably won't say anything. So for Balfrog, the idea is when you get from one side of him to the other, he'll start attacking, which makes him vulnerable. You're supposed to use the vents on either side of the room to, you know, jump from one side of him to the other. But for 2 of the 3 phases, I actually just took damage and walked through him because that's faster than using the vents. Lost a bunch of time in Grasstown. I apparently got a really good Grasstown in my PB, and I have not even come close to, you know, to saving time on that split since I set this PB. So it's actually quite good that I'm even ahead at all. So everything I've been doing throughout this area was to get the bomb from Malco. And finally I've got it, so I can blow open the door that I've been passing by. Really long cutscene here, actually. Well, you know, compared to the other ones in Cave Story, which is not saying a whole lot. But I'll go ahead and talk about what I meant earlier by momentum, I guess. The 2 main things that I'm talking about when I refer to Cave Story as momentum-based is, number 1, how quickly you build up your full movement speed from a standstill. Compared to a lot of games in Cave Story, it's pretty slow. It's like just under a full second, I would estimate. The second thing I was thinking about is the player's ability to maintain abnormally high speeds. You saw me do this just a moment ago when I was leaving the Balfrog fight. I got pushed forward by a vent, and by jumping as soon as I landed, I was able to carry that momentum. And that's something that I won't be using until quite a bit later into the run. That's going to be the only example of it at this point. But when it gets to later on in the run, when I'm doing that more, it gets really cool. As for my first point, the relatively large time it takes for the player to build their full movement speed makes mistakes in movement more costly, which is obviously pretty meaningful for speedrunning. I haven't speedrun every game out there. Quite the opposite. I have speedrun very few, but it seems to me that Cave Story is a little bit more costly than average on minor mistakes. Since this cutscene and the last one are, I think, the 2 longest ones in the game, and they're like back-to-back, this would be like a really good time for donations. People could pay for my physical abuse, and I would be 100% okay with that. So coming up is Sand Zone. A lot of people, when they talk about Cave Story from a non-speedrunning perspective, I hear them talk about how Sand Zone kind of sucks because it puts you on this long fetch quest. But in a speedrunning setting, it's a little bit different. I enjoy it quite a bit when I'm running, and I've got quite a bit to say about it in terms of commentary. So, I mean, I think it's perfectly a fine area as far as that kind of thing goes. This is the Curly Brace fight. Curly Brace is a good girl, but she thinks you're a bad guy, so she fights you. So you have to fight her and tell her that you're a good guy. Because that's how communication between 2 good people works. And there was nothing special about that fight. You just mash the fireball until she gets defeated. And then she gives me the machine gun, which is the best weapon in the game, and by best, I mean not actually the best, but coolest, I don't know. Another Easter egg, the panties. People are going to donate for those. They are going to. Don't worry about it. They will. So the reason the machine gun is cool, I'm sure everyone who's played Cave Story is already aware of this, but the machine gun is very cool for a very specific utility. And I'll talk more about that when that comes into play, which isn't very long. Throughout this area, I'm moving in very specific ways, shooting out specific blocks. The blocks that you shoot out in this area, to an extent, determine the patterns that these sun-like enemies will have. So I'm going to be coming back through this area, and I want them to be in certain positions. So as I shoot these blocks out, keep in mind it's deliberate. Oh yeah, I've also got a dog on my back, so, I mean, I don't know. People are gonna put Franker Z's in chat, and it's gonna be so epic and hilarious and hype. Nothing special about this boss either, just go up to it and mash Fireball. It shoots these little red things out, and if you destroy them, they have a chance to drop XP, so I got a couple extra little bits of XP from my machine gun. The reason why it's important to have level 2 missiles in this area is right there, so I can take out these sun enemies really quickly. If you hit them, they do 10 damage, so that can be pretty devastating. And waiting for them to move out of your way is of course slow, so being able to kill them quickly is good. My main goal at this point is to get level 3 machine gun as soon as I can. So I was hoping those crocs would drop some XP, but they really didn't. Let me go ahead and kill these crocodile skulls here. That second one dropped XP. If they drop XP, they drop a lot of it. So generally it's worth your time to go ahead and kill them if you need level 3 machine gun. In this cutscene, old lady Yinka is telling me to find her lost dogs, and that begins the fetch quest of the Sand Zone. Killing each of these enemies, hoping they drop XP. It's the main goal is to get level 3 machine gun by right about then. If you don't have it by then, you're gonna lose a little bit of time. And I got it right when I needed it. It's fairly common to get it at that point, so I mean it's not like a huge fear of bad luck or anything. And this is why you want it, so you can fly. I don't have to climb those blocks back up, I can just fly up. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the game, you should know that there are different choices you can make, basically, throughout the game, as far as what weapons you can get. If you turn down the machine gun, back when you're talking to Curly, it gives you the opportunity to get some other weapons later on that are supposedly better, but they're really not. You can't fly with the other weapons, and it turns out the machine gun actually does a ton of damage too, so there's really no downside to the machine gun. It's still not going to be my main damage dealer for the foreseeable future, but, I mean, it does better damage than the alternatives to, you know, it does better damage than the Spur and the Snake, which are the other weapons you can get. I pointed out earlier that when you're airborne, you move about 5% faster, so I'm going to jump a lot. Now that I have level 3 machine gun and I can fly, that is, you know, that's going to make staying airborne and therefore moving faster, you know, more manageable. in certain situations. Coming up is where I died in AGDQ 2014, very unfortunately. Some people told me I got unlucky. To an extent I did, but I mean I only died because I handled the bad luck poorly. I got greedy and tried to grab some XP in a dangerous spot and hit the spikes. But that's actually very rare. That might be like the second time ever that I've died in that area. As you can see, I just went through the birds there and it went totally fine. Generally, you want to have an experience buffer on your machine gun so you can take damage from the birds without slowing down, but I didn't need to in that case. I made it out unscathed. Unfortunately, for some reason, my finger slipped off of the fire button there, so I just fell into the birds. But, I mean, when you're at that point, all of the enemies surrounding you can drop a lot of XP, so I was able to get it back in no time. One more dog to get. I've continued to kill those skulls for XP. Depending on how much XP you get throughout the sand zone, at some point you want to consider not killing them anymore as you make your way past that area, but I think it was a good idea in this case. This room is kind of like a simple maze, the gimmick being that, you know, you can't actually see anything. But, I mean, if you're speedrunning the game, you've been through it, so you know how it's shaped, and the gimmick is meaningless. So I got all the dogs. Right here is a pretty important choice to make if you're speedrunning. If I talk to Yinka here, she gives me the life pot, or the life jar, or whatever you want to call it. Basically, it just sits in your inventory, and whenever you decide to use it, it'll bring you back to full health, no matter how damaged you are. And you can actually not talk to Yinka at all there, and, you know, save time from not having to go through the dialogue, but then you don't have the life jar. So if you don't have the life jar, it basically makes the very end of the game really risky. And I have no doubt that by the time it comes around to AGDQ 2015, I'll be good enough at the game that I won't need it, but I will still get it in a marathon. Like, it's unthinkable to not get it in a marathon setting, in my opinion, no matter how good you are. And it's not like it really looks cooler to not get it or anything, so it's, you know, it doesn't matter as far as like a presentation goes. This fight is pretty tough unless you know the strat for it, and even then, you know, you gotta practice the strat a bit. It really tests your weapon switching abilities, I guess, which is a major roadblock for new runners a lot of the time. The gimmick here on how to control the fight is when you hit Taroko with a missile, it forces her to jump. So rather than her patterns being a bit unpredictable, they are very predictable, and you can kill her very quickly that way. Another gold split. I ended the fight right on top of King, so that worked out really well. Until recently, it was pretty rare, actually, for me to have clean Taroko fights in my runs. I would get clean fights all the time in practice, but there would usually be something going wrong in my runs. Not really sure why, but that was really good. Next area here is the Labyrinth. Here is where I skip a life capsule. I could go just a little bit left here, and I don't remember exactly how much time it saves. Like, I don't know. At least 8 seconds, I think I remember somebody saying. But yeah, I could get 5 more health here, health capacity, but I don't, because I don't actually need it anymore. But if you are a new player, or even, I mean, I guess, an intermediately skilled player, you might consider getting that health. It doesn't take much time. And it can also depend not just on your general skill, but on how much health you have when you get to that area. Because there are a lot of these cockroach guys around, and if you have like 5 health, you're going to get 1 shot, and you're probably going to want to get the life capsule regardless of whether you usually need it or not. So, but if you can make it to this guy, it doesn't matter, because he brings you back to full health. Dr. Ghetto. That cockroach up above is tricky. He almost got me. Oh yeah, I didn't get a 1-round Pooh Black fight here. I was kind of mad. I've been getting very consistent 1 rounds, and then of course I get a PB where I get a 2-round. Of course. And of course he delevels my machine gun, which baffled me. I don't think I'd ever had that happen before. I lost a ton of time here because I was trying to get it back. These cockroaches usually drop a lot of XP, but of course the first one I killed did not. So I lost my lead at this point, but not by too much. It's not too rare for your machine gun to be de-leveled in this area. It's kind of hard to keep it. The Monster X fight is pretty cool. It's not that complicated, really, as far as what strategies you use, but I think it's a fight that looks really cool. And I hear a lot of people refer to Monster X as a really hard boss if they're not that experienced with the game. So I think being able to take him out the way you do in the speedrun is kind of a spectacle. I actually had kind of a bad fight here, because in both my first and second cycles, I wasn't really in a good position to do as much damage as I could have. Third cycle was okay. Or fourth, however you want to think about it. And my Monster X split in my PV was wrong, so I'm actually behind. I'm plus a few seconds right here. I'm not minus 23 at all. The Balrog fight here is quite cool. Number one, just because it goes so quickly, and number two, because you're not even looking at him the whole time. Well, part of the time, whatever. If it is unfair at what I was doing there, I've gotten a few questions before, like, how were you throwing the blade backwards during that fight? You're not throwing the blade backwards, it's just that when you throw the blade, the hitbox for it starts a little bit behind you. So if you're hugging close to an enemy, you can hit it with blade, even if you're facing away from it. Here's Labyrinth in one of the hardest areas of the game if you're not quite well practiced at it. Main goal is to get missiles back to level 2. I got a missile upgrade, and that brings it back down to being completely unleveled. So I need to re-level them to level 2 for an upcoming area. It's very important. If I have to lose time to get XP for it, then that's worth it. Fortunately, I got the XP I needed pretty quickly. It's quite reliable, honestly. I think Labyrinth done really well. Looks really, really cool. There are so many projectiles and things that you have to dodge, and you have to do some fairly precise machine gun hovering. I'm pretty consistent at the area though, so I mean, even though it looks, I would say it is really skillful, but I mean, it's nothing to worry about. This right here is why I needed level 2 missiles. There's a door that you're supposed to attack to open far to the right, but you can just shoot missiles at it from off screen to damage it. You need level 2 missiles because they have splash damage, so you don't need to hit the specific spot that you have to hit to damage it. That's not the only reason I need level 2 missiles. That'll come up momentarily. Here's another momentum carry through the water. The first one I just did is a little tough. This second one leaving is pretty easy. I mean, there's not really anything complicated about it. Just don't hit the wall or the ground when you are entering the water. It saves like 3 seconds each way, so it's pretty good. And this is the core fight. The core fight is one of the biggest points of randomness throughout the game. There is a specific way of killing it called the core quick kill. I am not going for that. I probably won't be going for that until I cut like another minute off my time. I fell like a dummy. But you can see I was spamming missiles just then, and that's one of the reasons why you want level 2 missiles going into this fight. The little core, the smaller cores that are surrounding the larger core, they protect it. They are invincible, and when you hit them, they just kind of move out of the way. So they can really block you from damaging the large core. And you want level 2 missiles because their splash damage goes right through that. Sometimes they can give you a good pattern, and they won't really be blocking him well at all. But, you know, if they are, level 2 missiles are a godsend. And, not going for a core quick kill, that was a pretty good fight. I did fall off the platform near the beginning, but I mean, that was really the only issue. You drown intentionally. And then Curly Brace saves you. And then you save her. This is the waterway, it's quite nice. This is the waterway, there's not a whole lot to say about it. In the areas in the water where you can see there are currents that are going to carry me, I pretty much have no control over my movement. I can use the machine gun to boost myself up or down, but as far as how fast I go and things like that, I don't really have any control. These jellies do 5 damage each, so I clear as many of them out as I can before I proceed. In this room I had to do a bunch of stuff for the sake of getting the best ending, or the true ending. Basically, Curly Brace has drowned, and you need to read up on how to treat flooded robots, because, you know, she is a robot. So you learn how to treat flooded robots, and then you drain her right before taking her right back out into the water. I don't... whatever. And basically, if you don't do this stuff and make the correct choices here, then you're not going to get the true ending. Next boss, Ironhead. Ironhead is actually a boss from another pixel game, Ika-chan. And he's an even worse boss fight in that game. He's not actually that bad in this game. But he sucks in general. Bully Ironhead every day. Coming up, I'm about to get the coolest item in any video game, the Booster 2.0. As its name implies, you can boost around with it. I mean, it's if you jump and you hit jump again in midair, you boost in whatever direction you're holding, is pretty much how it works. I mentioned earlier that by jumping as soon as you hit the ground, you can maintain abnormal momentum from midair. So, knowing that, I'm going to use the booster along with that mechanic and the machine gun to essentially maintain the booster speed indefinitely. Like the booster, when you use the booster, it only boosts you for a short distance and then it has to recharge. But by doing this trick, I don't have to land to let it recharge. I messed up a trick there. It's one of the hardest tricks in the game, in my opinion. Probably the single hardest trick in the game. And it only saves like 3 seconds if you get it. It's really not a big deal, but I gotta go for it anyway, you know? There's supposed to be a boss fight there, but I skipped it by just leaving the room at a fairly brisk pace. That's all it takes. No joke. I have no idea how that was a gold egg corridor, but I'll take it. It wasn't bad, but I mean, I know I've done better. Maybe when I was still using Landfare or something. The momentum carrying trick that I pointed out earlier, I forgot to mention, is called machine boosting, so I mean that's what I'm going to be calling it from here on out. There are basically 2 methods of doing it, 3 actually, depending on how you want to think about it. One is to boost into a platform and jump immediately, and the second one, if there is no like adjacent platform to boost into, is to basically jump in the air, boost forward, machine gun yourself down into the ground, and then jump, like I did right there. So, with that technique, you can basically machine boost anywhere. Messed up a boost there. Using that particular method for setting up a machine boost is a little difficult for me still. It's very effective though, because if you do it that way, you're going to keep all of your momentum. Because, I mean, you're using the machine gun to boost yourself into the air initially. So you basically are not spending any time touching the ground. Machine boosting saves a lot of time in the Plantation because the Plantation is just a very large area, so you're covering a lot of ground at once without having to take any downtime on the ground. I gotta talk to this guy twice for story reasons. Talking to him the second time is what triggers the wall to the right to open up to let you out. Messed up another boost. Each time I've messed up these boosts, though, I recovered quickly. I mean, it's not like it costs you a ton of time if you screw it up. That's why, spoilers, I'm gonna get a gold rest split here in a bit. And my opinion. You gotta answer this guy's questions in a specific order. Yes, yes, no, yes, yes, no. Then you have to look at that, and you have to read the letter in your inventory. All sorts of triggers in Cave Story. It's like I'm on Tumblr. But the triggers are very non-annoying and not intrusive to the gameplay, so it's fine in my opinion. Nothing to say about that fight that isn't apparent, I guess. The most effective way to damage him is to, you know, jump along with him. So you gotta kind of be familiar with the timing of his jumps and match it. And some people might be wondering why I don't use missiles or the blade during that fight, and that's simply because my opinion is immune to them. I don't know why. I guess Pixel just thought the fight would be too easy that way, but it does not take any damage from missiles or the blade. So you gotta use machine gun or fireball. And I did all that stuff so I could get the mushroom to feed the Curly, so she could get her memories back, because she lost them earlier. Again, it's just stuff that's required for the true ending. I'm losing my voice, oh well. Who cares? Not me. Honestly, the next couple minutes are a little bit boring, and it would be a donation reading time. This woman, Momarine, takes away my booster. She gives me a cool looking mask, but it's just not the same. I don't have anything to talk about while this happens. I honestly wish this portion of the game didn't exist. I mean, it's only like 2 minutes, but the thing about the machine boosting technique is you don't actually use it a lot. I've done almost all of... Actually, I think I have done all of the machine boosting that I'm going to do for the run. Yeah, I have. Because from here on out, once I get the booster back, I'm going to go into the final cave. And once you get to the final cave, all of your weapons are de-leveled, and it's not worth the time it takes to re-level your machine gun to level 3. So I can't use it to machine boost again throughout the run. And it's just kind of unfortunate that the coolest mechanic of the game is only used for a short portion of the game. The rest of the game, even without that mechanic, is great, so, you know, it's not that big of a deal, but there are people who've made mods of Cave Story. You know, some story-based, some challenge-based, but either way, if I were gonna make a mod, you better believe that it would feature machine boosting like the entire way through. Pretty much done with this area of the game. Just need to talk to Momarine once more. She gives me the booster back, takes away the mask, and I can proceed to the final cave. Final cave is one of the coolest areas of the game in my opinion. For those who might be unaware, if you've maybe beaten the game without getting the best ending or whatever, the final cave is actually different depending on what ending you have qualified for at this point. Basically, you would not be able to get through this particular version of the final cave without the booster. Maybe if you had machine gun and you could level it, I suppose you could do it that way. Anyway, the final cave is great. It's very fast-paced, and I finally got that. That's like the first time I've ever gotten that momentum carry in a run. It saves like no time, and it's awesome. Final cave is basically the biggest test I think this game has until hell for non-machine gun related boosting. The red demon I probably should have commented on. I take damage from the little force field intentionally because it only does 1 damage, and then I'm able to use the iframes, you know, for the rest of the fight. This is the Misery fight. It's a little bit random because she can teleport to random locations in the room. So if she teleports to like the complete opposite end that you're on, it sucks. She didn't really do that here though. I got pretty lucky. As you can see, Misery's body itself only does 1 damage to you, so if you're trying to be fast, just fly into her and mash blade. All of her actual attacks do a ton of damage, so you want to avoid those, which isn't so hard once you practice the fight a bit. The Doctor fight, I think, is great for a marathon setting. It looks really cool. You kill him so fast, it's great. For this first phase, you want to do what I just did there, and then you want to hope he teleports close to you, take damage from the Jewel, which only does 1 damage, and then camp his hitbox with your blade. Second phase, camp his hitbox with your blade, spam missiles when he jumps. And missiles absolutely wreck his health. It's pretty important to perform the way I did there on the second phase, because, I mean, right now I have 14 health, and that's a safe amount of health to have going into this next boss fight. If I had taken a single extra hit during that second phase, I'd have 9 health, which I would not feel so safe with. You can get more health by talking to Chaco, and that wouldn't really be such a bad thing in a marathon setting, but if you're trying to save time, it takes a lot of time to talk to Chaco and get health. So I was pretty happy to not have to do that here. The undead core fight itself is not really notable. It's not actually all that skillful, other than your mashing speed, I guess. I want to make sure to kill Misery or Sue before anything else, and killing Misery out of the two is the most optimal. The reason for that being that if you don't kill either one, then it'll take a really long time for the core to open up again. There's really not much else to say about that fight. Some people focus on killing Sue, and sometimes I do as well, but she's really not a threat, so, I mean, kill her as long as you're not losing time during the times when the core is vulnerable, but it really doesn't matter. For the normal ending, this would basically be where the game is over. You follow Sue here, jump off the ledge, and the game is over. But this is the true ending. So you go in here, and the real cave story starts here. Again, all of my weapons are de-leveled, just like when I entered the final cave. I'm collecting this experience on my missile launcher. I'll want to have level 3 missiles by the end of this area. It's very important. Here's Curly. I'm picking her up. She's coming with. This room sucks for speedrunning. It's my least favorite thing about Cave Story. And you would think that since I love Cave Story, that's not saying a lot, but it actually is saying a lot. I hate this room. It's stupid. It shouldn't be in the game. These blocks do a ton of damage and they fall in random patterns. So most of the time you have to choose between either taking a ton of damage or losing a ton of time. Fortunately, I got like the best pattern I've ever had in my life, so I didn't have to do either of those things. It's very rare to get luck as good as I got there. I also performed pretty well if I say so myself, but I mean it was mostly luck. Throughout this area, I'm waiting because you see that thing on the wall counting down? That's basically like a bomb, and when you activate it, it counts down from 5 and blows open the wall. And that's what you have to wait for to get through each wall that's blocking you. Right here, I take damage off of this guy to iframe through these spikes. If I had level 3 missiles here, I'd be able to shoot through that wall onto the next bomb, saving me about 5 seconds. Unfortunately, I actually didn't have level 3 missiles, and I didn't realize that until after I had tried to do it, so I was sitting there looking like an idiot. So I lost probably 6 seconds from that. Massive missile ammo upgrade here. I don't even remember how many missiles it is, but it's like 20 or more. This boss went down a little bit slower than usual because I didn't have level 3 missiles still. I have them now. It's fine. My hell was not great in my PB, so even now I'm saving time. First phase of Vala, stand inside of him, Mash Blade. Curly's Nemesis, by the way, the weapon she's holding is called the Nemesis. I'm manipulating that so that basically she and I are both hitting the same things at once. That's how I'm doing so much damage to Ballas's eye here. And here's a neat trick. Magma Peach came up with this. I got it, sick. That trick is a little bit random because the bats that are flying up above you can randomly hit you and knock you off. But it saves enough time to be worth trying. Level 3 missiles to finish Ballas off, that's about it. Pretty easy to understand, I think. And sick. I was 0.6 seconds from saving a whole minute, and 5.73 seconds from cutting the hour. Remember how earlier I said I would have saved like another 6 seconds if I had had level 3 missiles to shoot through the wall? Yeah. That's a really, really good reason to not cut the hour. I'm really happy about it. I don't know what else to say. I'm going ahead and re-recording the last bit because my voice was shot at that point. And I sounded like an idiot. So basically all I had to say at that point was number 1, cool. Number 2, if you're interested in picking up Cave Story, there's this tutorial by DBX, I'm going to link it. You can also ask me questions if you want. I'm not the best, but, you know, I'm getting there. There's also Cave Story IRC, even though it's dead. You might as well just go to the Carol Blaster IRC anymore if you want to get questions about Cave Story answered. irc.speedrunslive.com, hashtag Cave Story, or hashtag Carol Blaster. Let me actually check and see if that's right. Hang on. irc2.speedrunslive.com. Okay. So that's it. I'm not gonna let the credits play because, like, I mean, the music isn't even here. I guess I could add the music in my video editor, but I'm not gonna do that. Bye.